Welcome back to another episode of Direct Edition. I'm your host, Dave, the guy from last week that you just can't get rid of until you rate the podcast. Just kidding. Today, I'm presenting you my first interview done exclusively for the podcast. This is not going to be on my YouTube channel. The person that I'm talking to today, you may know from YouTube. His name is Mickey Finnegan, aka Swagglehaus. In this interview today, I thought I'd discuss a varied amount of topics with Mickey about his career in film, TV, and music. Most people don't even realize that he is an accomplished music video director, commercial director, and he's written and directed a few short films. So with this interview, I really wanted to get to know him better. We know each other a little bit. We've talked, we've been on the screen together, but I never really dove into these subjects with him. And I thought it would be a great way to get to know him and also for other people to get to know him. So I think you're going to really enjoy some of the conversations that we have about TV and film and growing up watching MTV and wrestling and also comics, the MCU and all that, all the good things that come along with that. Yeah, this was my chance to learn a little bit more about him, and I'm really excited for all of you to hear this. So you know what, without any further ado or jibber jabber, I present to you my interview with Mickey Finnegan, aka Swagglehaus. Mickey, how you doing?
I'm good, Dave. Thanks for inviting me on the show today. It's a privilege to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Well, I am very appreciative of your time. I wanted to talk to you about all things in the aspects of your career, but also your interests and the things that kind of align with those two worlds. So your commercials, you've done music videos, you've done short film. As a person that most people don't really know, that I went to film school for a year until I realized it wasn't for me. But what's the first time you can remember being affected by a movie in a way that you're like, I want to do this?
Oh man, it's very clear to me. It was the very first time that I saw the making of Jurassic Park. I think so. I'm 83, so I probably would be 10 years old, I think, or maybe this would have been 92. So maybe I was like 9 or something.
Right.
And it was this special on TV. And I don't even remember like what the context was, but it was like the Spielberg making of Jurassic Park. Hey, this movie's coming out, and whatever channel was on, at the time. And I just remember seeing like the dinosaur animatronics and everything that was going into that. And I was just absolutely blown away. And from that point, at least, I had a very big interest in special effects and filmmaking, and what that would end up being. I wasn't sure, but I saw that and I was like, oh, that looks amazing. I would like to do something like that, And so that's kind of, I think, the first memory I have where, film inspired me in a way.
Yeah, that's a pivotal part in my childhood too. I think I made each of my parents separately on different days of the week. Within the first week of it coming out, they're like, "Oh, you're not. You can take me to the movies today, right? You're not my, And I think I saw Jurassic Park 3 or 4 times in the theaters, and yeah, I was like 13 years old.
Yeah, yeah. It was like I feel like maybe the people who are of our age are always going to remember like how huge of a film that was. But if there are people who are listening that don't remember, I mean, I feel like that was a monumental event movie. And that was like Avengers, in that year.
Yeah. And it was a pivotal part also, looking back at it, obviously in hindsight, but even at that time, it was pivotal for like, Cameron opened the door with T2, and then Jurassic Park comes, or wait, no, yeah. T2 came out first and Jurassic Park, but it was all Stan Winston work, I believe. And
ILM, I think, and
yeah.
that whole company just doing incredible stuff at the time.
Yeah. And we were all just doe-eyed kids, like, wow. And most people were. It wasn't even just kids that were doe-eyed for those 2 movies. Were you, so being that we're around the same age, are you somebody that grabbed a camcorder when you were a kid and just started making movies?
Yeah, I have kind of a similar story to, well, I find it to be a similar story to a lot of people who I know who got into film. But when I was young, and maybe I saw Jurassic Park, the making of or whatever, and And then shortly after that, I took my parents' video camera, which would be their like vacation film movie thing. And I just started making little movies with myself and my friends. And I was heavily into skateboarding, when I was in middle school. So a lot of filming ourselves was filming us skating and also making skits at the time. And Spike Jonze was like a super influential skateboard filmmaker kind of person doing music videos. And there's an old skate video called Mouse, if you guys happen to know this reference. But Spike Jonze directed this thing. And I think at the time he probably was a somewhat successful filmmaker, but it's like he made this skate video that has no business being as incredible as it was, but he had like all these incredible skits in it, and it was just awesome. So a lot of my youth was trying to replicate those types of things.
Right. Being a skater, would you put Gleaming the Cube as one of the greatest skate movies of all time?
It's definitely one of the greatest skate movies of all time. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I mean, it does have a Tony Hawk cameo, so you can't go wrong with it.
It's true. Although it's funny, a little story, like I grew up and I happened to, one of my childhood friends, his dad was one of the founders of Thrasher magazine. And,
wow.
And if you guys know some of the not politics, but like the rival magazines at the time, there was like Thrasher and there was another one called Transworld, and Tony Hawk was like affiliated with Transworld. So my friend would never let us be fans of Tony Hawk. He was always like, no, you can't root for that guy, man. You can't root for him. But we all thought he was like amazing, and so it was like, he was. And so it was just funny. He was like a rival quarterback on another football team in a way.
Wow. So, right. So growing up in the Bay Area, that's huge because Thrasher was out of there.
Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know, Mickey, his career path goes two ways. And the other way is you are Swagglehaus on YouTube with comics. Did, with skating, obviously comics and skating kind of go hand in hand, especially in the Bay Area. Were you away from superhero, but did you get exposed to underground stuff at that time when you were a kid growing up in that area?
If I think back on it, I don't think I did. I was behind the curve on a lot of like truly indie sort of comic stuff, like learning about Robert Crumb and those types of like true indie artists. Although there was maybe some crossover where, skateboard art was like pretty huge. And there was probably a lot of people that were like, had each of their foots in various ends of the spectrum on that. And so, I absorbed it a little bit through osmosis, but I don't have any specific memories of it.
Okay. Yeah. I was just curious because I didn't, growing up in New York, it's like a totally different world and all of that stuff exists, but it's, it's all regional. You've got totally different type of that culture on the East Coast. So going in with youth, we grew up in the MTV generation, which is arguably, we are the most fortunate generation in music, like maybe aside from the 60s, but for access to it, us 90s kids were spoiled rotten.
Yeah.
Can you point to, because your success in music videos is literally, you directed music videos that have billions of views. Do you have a video or a couple videos that you can point to, or did you somehow grow up without MTV and somehow make your way into music videos?
No, I watched them as much as we all did. I think anyone who's within our age bracket, I think probably had a lot of these same interests. We talk about like that was culture, right? It was Jurassic Park, and skateboarding was culture, and music videos were also culture at the time as well. And so it's funny to look back on it and think like now everyone has their own silos into what like entertainment they go to, whether they watch like YouTube or they watch, Netflix shows or whatever, wherever their wheelhouse is. But I don't know. I think back then, culture was more of like everyone kind of paid attention to these various things over the years, and so there's a synergy there. I watched a ton of music videos growing up, and as far as early memories of what was inspiring, I remember watching like Michael Jackson, what was it, Black or White, and the
Oh yeah.
Egyptian one premiere like after The Simpsons. Like I don't know if you
Yeah.
remember watching that one, but like those types of videos at the time, those were huge, huge premieres. And then I definitely, watched everything growing up. I mean, all the way
Sure.
until high school and TRL, like the TRL days
Yep.
with what was the guy's name?
Carson Daly.
Yeah, Carson Daly.
Yeah.
Those were huge. So yeah, I was a pretty big music video watcher. I
Right.
didn't necessarily think that I was going to go into music videos
Mhm.
from that point, but later on in life, it became like here's a pretty clear path into going into some form of filmmaking for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's funny because you mentioned Spike Jonze, and arguably one of the greatest music videos of all time is "Sabotage,"
Yeah,
and that's him. I mean, once again, we were spoiled. We grew up also with a generation of directors who started in music videos, and our household, Fincher, Jones, Michel Gondry, like,
yeah,
Mark Romanek. It's one of those things that I think I don't know if there's, because like you said, you've got your silo, right? You can watch whatever, but there's too many options now, and there is no clear lane of like, this is the zeitgeist. Every once in a while, so like something comes up that's the zeitgeist. Right now, it's Deadpool, Wolverine, like that is everything. Like everybody from all walks of life. But in the MTV generation, that's how we all found out about music, and we were able to have this taste of like, Enter Sandman comes out, and it's this song that's everywhere, but at the same time, you've got like some, I don't know what '94's big rap hit was, but maybe it was a Will Smith song, and everybody knows that, and you have people that are watching these videos and being like, "Yeah, I like heavy metal and I like rap and I like." Now it just feels like you have to really seek everything out to know what's going on.
yeah, totally. And it's like it's one of the things I think about, even sort of the star power of like comic creators now. Like there will never be another Todd McFarlane
Mm-mm.
or Rob Liefeld anymore, because there's just too many people who are creating comic books, and there's too many, different forms of entertainment. And it's like, even if you have like a breakout superstar of today, like a whoever, Peach Momoko or something like that, like she'll just, there's too many channels for her to ever
Yeah.
be as big as someone like a Todd McFarlane was back then. So it's everything in culture, whether it's the musicians of the time or the, like you said, the music video directors at the time. And
Mhm.
as you were naming all those guys, the Mark Romaneks and stuff. And, when I got into videos, they were still like the Mount Rushmore to me, and I
Yeah.
look up to their work, and I had the opportunity to meet a couple of them, but I would eventually start to work with people in the music video industry who would tell me the stories of like when they got to do videos, because
Yeah.
by the time that I got to do videos, like we had like some pretty good money, generally
Right.
speaking. We still
But
had
it
like
wasn't
really,
like
really
that.
good budgets, but it wasn't, yeah, no, it wasn't that. Like I'd hear the days you talk about like the Will Smith video, like Welcome to Miami and stuff. Like I
Oh my
hear the
god.
days like they just rent Ferraris for whatever, just for fun. All the producers is driving them around, and just a lot of good times on those
Well
sets. I think a lot of money being thrown around. So yeah, it was a different world back then, and
the record industry was, you were just reigning in cash, and, yeah, I gotta imagine, like, a budget for, California Love was probably in the millions.
oh yeah, yeah, huge video, and yeah, like you said, they were making so much more money because yeah, you had to buy the album. Like
Yeah.
people were selling albums at $15 when they were just one hit wonders.
Mhm.
Today, if you're a one hit wonder, like maybe you get somebody to buy your single, maybe, but probably not.
Yeah, yeah. It is a wildly different world, and, the excess is probably what leads to I mean, the excess of every industry leads to the downfall of that industry,
Yeah,
you know?
that's true.
We can double quote, each Catwoman, either Michelle Pfeiffer or Anne Hathaway. You all live so large and leave nothing for the rest of us.
Yeah, that's
Fire
true.
fire's coming. Um, you went to USC. What's your first kind of foray into directing?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I grew up making films, in high school and all that. And then I got to go to USC Film School, and I was always wanted to direct. That was the thing that I love doing. I love creating, telling stories and building worlds. And so, I out of out of college, when I was approaching graduation, the idea was, okay, well, what am I going to do? Like, I want to jump into directing. I want to be able to work with people. And a friend of mine in school happened to be a music industry major, and he actually had graduated the year ahead of me, and he was like, hey, I'm up in the Bay Area, and I'm talking to a lot of like hip hop artists up here, and they need people who are want to make music videos and are passionate and can do good work, and maybe I can introduce you to some of them. So that was kind of the first sort of light bulb moment to me of like, oh yeah, like maybe I can do music videos. And like I said, I had grown up watching them and I really enjoyed them, but I never thought of it as necessarily like the path for me. Although when I go back and I think about like Spike Jonze being an influence, it's like, well, of course, like that was, the path that I wanted to go on as well. So I just started networking with like a bunch of hip hop artists. And I think when I graduated, it was around that MySpace time. MySpace was hot. So that became like a really big tool for me to DM artists, and like I would be on people's MySpace pages and people would have their top 8. So it'd be like one artist and he'd have his top 8 to the other artists. And so I'd follow them and add them. And really it's just, I was just coming out of school. I just had my whatever student films that I made and other little, spec stuff. And so I was just showing that to all these artists and being like, hey man, like I want to do your video and blah, blah, blah. And I would pitch them and just go out to clubs and bars and try to meet them. And then eventually I finally got an artist. His name was Keek the Sneak. If you guys are from the Bay Area legend. And he had this song called Super Hyphy. And it was a big song. And he saw what I wanted to do, and I got in touch with the manager, and then he ended up agreeing like, hey, okay, I'll let you direct my music video and we can put a budget together and stuff. And so I ended up doing that. And it was a big success. That one got onto like BET right away, and it got onto MTV and all that stuff because the song was hot. And, I'd like to think that I did a pretty fun and cool video, but the reality in music video, the saying is the song dictates what your eyes see. And so if you got a hot song, and a good artist who's charismatic, I can film them against a white wall for 4 minutes and everyone will watch it no matter what. So, but it was a fun video and it was successful. And that kind of started my, career into directing videos.
It's interesting because like at that time, which would be like around the early 2000s.
Like 2005, 6, 7.
So it's when that kind of shifts where you do need a hot song to make a music video. Whereas you go back 10 years and you look at videos like Beavis and Butthead broke so many bands by talking about their videos, even if the videos were shit or if the song was okay. And it's interesting how that shifted where the video kind of would make the song sometimes.
Yeah,
and
that is true. Yeah.
Like, do you think, and obviously it's impossible to say this, but would Thriller be as big of a song if John Landis didn't make that video? I don't think it would.
I don't think it would either. No, I do say the same that the ears dictate what your eyes see, but at the same time, like, no, there's some videos that are so iconic, that they elevated for sure the status of like that song and artist.
But as we get into the internet era, it's the other way around because that, you didn't need a video, but if the song was amazing and you made a great video around that song, then it would help. But now I don't know where it stands, but we'll get to now. In what kind of music were you a rap fan generally growing up, or were you just kind of listening to a little bit of everything? Or
I listened to mostly a little bit of everything. Whatever I liked hip hop, I like rap, I like R&B, I like rock. So again, it was like sort of whatever the mainstream thing was. Maybe that's a little dismissive of me, but I enjoyed Metallica when I was young, and I really liked Primus and Tool, and those were some of my favorite bands growing up. And then I listened to a lot of Tupac and a lot of
Mhm.
Biggie, and later on in high school, it was like Jay-Z was really big at that time, and I liked a lot of his stuff. So I was pretty open to whatever, was out in the culture. So yeah.
Was there any point, like, as you were a music fan before you got into directing, any point where you realized, like, you would be listening to a song and you'd maybe visualize something like an idea for
Mm.
I used to do that daydream kinda as a kid, like, I'd hear a song and imagine creating a music video around that because all I did literally for, like, I don't know, like 7 years of my life was just watch MTV. I didn't watch anything else. I just watched MTV from, like, probably 90 to 97.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think maybe it wasn't so specific as imagining like the videos, but I definitely had that creative dreamer sort of mindset, and
Mhm.
it's with a lot of our interests. I think even with comic books, and just diving into worlds or dreaming about, characters coming to life and, other things like my Magic the Gathering cards and just staring at the one card art and just
Yeah,
being like, wow, like what is this world here, and what's behind this, and who is this skeleton, and what's the story behind them, and just kind of dreaming about that stuff. So
sure.
yeah, even if it's like, you know, I probably didn't have any visions of music videos specifically, but I think I spent a lot of time in my head, like creating in a way.
Yeah, yeah, as, most creative people, that's where it starts, right? I can't
Yeah.
imagine not being one of those people who doesn't have an overactive imagination.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because, that's what we still do now, even with like our
Mm.
YouTubes and podcasts and I don't know, why do I think that you also are a musician as well?
I'm not. I always kind of I should have had somebody shove a microphone in front of my face. Like, I don't have a
Mm,
great voice, but I can sing. But I grew up watching Axl Rose, and I know what it like, I always thought that I could just command an audience from a stage with a
right.
microphone.
Right.
Didn't matter what I was doing. And, but no, I tried, but never took to any instruments, just this thing, the voice.
The voice is all you need. It's the money. It's the money
That is
maker.
true. That is true. Uh, but yeah, I never took any singing lessons. I always thought I should, but, I can scream really well though.
That's an
I
art.
Yeah, and I used to, SAT prep courses, I couldn't focus, so I would just, I'm a big Weird Al fan, I grew up a huge Weird Al fan, and I would rewrite song lyrics and parody songs, and, like, I always felt
Mm,
like if he ever needed somebody to pass the torch to, it could have been me.
yeah.
But, he's a huge influence. I don't know if you grew up, like, loving him, but he's a huge influence just on my sense of humor.
You're actually, yeah, I can't believe I skipped over him. I mean, like, talk about how huge his music videos were.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
his music videos probably were my favorite growing up, and
Yeah,
later on in my career, I would do videos for LMFAO, and I mean, we're probably channeling, our love for Weird Al in a lot of ways, So yeah, he was huge, and UHF is to this day is one of the greatest movies ever made.
100%, 100%. Where once again, like I hate to be in the ageist sense, but we are part of a generation that got to grow up with there is nobody else. Like there's Weird Al, and there's no like there are people that have tried, there are funny people that have made music, but that's a once in a lifetime human being, and
Yeah.
we got to
Yeah.
grow with him.
Yeah. And yeah, and we were so lucky to do it. And there's probably people today who are funny and charismatic and charming and witty and clever, but there's a lot of them. And someone like whoever would be the Weird Al of today kind of is just on TikTok and they have their
Yeah,
own audience and they're doing their own thing. And you or me might never see them, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to be successful in their own way. They're just in their
sure.
own world, So it's yeah, you don't get the shared experience of getting to, see this amazing person at once.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's kind of a reason for people like us that do have these communities that because we grew up in a time where like you could just talk about that song that you heard on the radio and everybody be like, oh yeah, I heard it yesterday or I saw that movie, whereas like you have to really try and actively find a community of people to share now with instead
Yeah.
of like this entire shared experience.
I think that's interesting because I think that that's why, even today, like with movies that come out and everything, like everything is so nostalgia driven, but it's like we're
Mhm.
kind of like the last generation that sort of has a shared nostalgia. So all the companies are leveraging that as much as they can. And I kind
Yeah.
of feel bad for like a lot of the Gen Z, type of kids or Gen Alpha and stuff. Like they don't have a shared culture in the same kind of way. So it'll be interesting to see like what nostalgia becomes, uh 20 years from now for them.
Yeah, because right, like, one of the things that I've seen recently, speaking of that, is people being nostalgic for Vine. And,
Mm,
for those of you that are listening that are like, "What did he just say?" Vine was the first TikTok. Vine was, Reels before it was Reels. It is the prototype for everything that social media has become with videos, and it was this quippy you can make I don't remember how long the max was, but they were usually 15 seconds. You make something and you throw it up on Vine and it's funny and it loops, and then it goes to the next thing, and it was brilliant
yeah.
it was brilliant. It
Vi-
really got the comedic people to come out of their shells, and I'm starting to see some nostalgia for that, and I'm like, "That's what nostalgia is gonna look like going forward for Gen Z,
yeah.
generally."
Yeah. Early internet stuff for sure.
Yeah, yeah, memes and, right, like, I'm a big fan of, Zombie Jonathan, I like Totals,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
like,
Or like Charlie bit my finger and all these like,
yeah.
is this real life? The dentist kid, you know?
Mhm, mhm. So, but yes, I think there is a lot of, nostalgia is in the air, and I was gonna say one of the things I was gonna say is I can remember I think, Infinity War comic book movies have been a big part of the shared experience of the last 20 years of, pop culture. Infinity War is a perfect example, but I think the biggest one that probably won't get topped is gonna be The Dark Knight, because I remember
Mm,
that movie came out and like wildfire, it spread and everybody you knew had seen it at least once within like 2 weeks of it coming out, and I that was just the last time that's a non-TV part of the culture that was shared with everybody.
yeah.
TV is the closest thing on a regular basis, Game of Thrones, Lost, Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, like all of those things were watched by everybody. But
Yeah.
The Dark Knight was that big moment.
To me, that's what superhero movies can be.
Mhm.
And so every time I watch a movie, and I enjoyed Deadpool and Wolverine, but some of the last Marvel movies, I haven't loved them so much. And to me, like maybe it's unfair to do this, but the Dark Knight sort of is my bar. Like, because I think
Yeah.
like that's what we need. We need to get to that again. And I realize that that's maybe hard to do,
Yeah.
but when people are like, "Oh, this movie was amazing," I feel like it's such recency bias. I'm like, no, Dark Knight was amazing. Let's
Y
let's let's ease it back a little. This movie was good, not amazing. Let's save that
right.
word for Dark Knight.
Uh, and it just has to do with who was involved,
Yeah,
you don't have a guy like Chris Nolan doing reshoots the last 2 weeks. You
that's
don't
true.
have him doing rewrites 6 months through shooting that are gonna change the entire movie. Like, they had a big obstacle to deal with in that movie. I don't you once again, we can't imagine a timeline where Heath Ledger's still alive, but, the way that story went, obviously, his death brought a lot more eyes to the movie, but his performance was really why people wanted to see that movie because he was so good and it's such a great movie. But yeah, you can use that as a bar, but you're gonna be disappointed by everything else.
Yeah, I basically have been. I've been waiting since 2000 and what, 6 or what did that
Yeah.
come out? 7? For that dopamine hit to hit my veins. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting. Like he's one of the only filmmakers probably that has the clout to be able to be unchallenged, especially in this world
Mhm.
today. And not to derail our conversation, but like if we go into like the movie industry has changed so much
Oh my
as
god,
far
yeah.
as like tech's involvement in everything. And honestly, I don't know how we go back to that. I don't think anyone in Hollywood can can make a movie like that anymore, because no one will
Except
ever
him.
have the creative freedom, nor will they have the except for him, or the the star power to cut through all the corporate tape and say, no, this is the way we're doing it because I said so. I'm going to be waiting a long, long, long time to ever get a
Yeah,
movie of that.
you're right. I mean, he'll keep. I mean, luckily we still have him, and he's still making great movies. Like, Oppenheimer was a masterpiece of the highest order. But I think, I'd like to see maybe Matt Reeves does come to that level. I mean, he has kind of just gotten, you know, upped his game with every movie he's made, and James Gunn might be the only other person. If Superman does the kind of, if the movie is as good as his passion for the movie is, just like his passion for all the movies that he's made, then sure, he may not be as talented or as, amazing as Nolan as a director, but he will be able to push things in the directions that he wants them to go in. But
Yeah.
yeah, corporate machine's going to be the corporate machine, and there's
Yeah.
nothing we can do to stop it.
Well,
We can hope for smaller movies.
yeah. Well, and the tech way of doing it, which is like, that to me is the big problem, because there's so much data in how they evaluate what they feel is successful or works well. In being on YouTube, you can understand these things, click through rates and
Yeah.
watch time and all this stuff. So it's so hard to be like, well, I know you want to do the movie this way, but our best practices show that audience retention is higher in the first 30 seconds if you incorporate a blah, 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 blah. So you have to like check all these things, and then you kind of have this algorithm making this movie, and that's really the tough part that I think a lot of people are fighting against in the creative space.
Well, it goes from being art to being advertising to being marketing. Like, those two things shouldn't be lopped into the same thing. And that's where we have been in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
It's just like marketing and money, and they spend so much money on marketing, so they have to make it back on the back end. And it's like, whatever happened to just making a movie and letting the audience decide how good or bad it is with their money? You force so many people out of the conversation before the movie even comes out.
Yeah.
You show too much. You give too many options to watch it at home, or watch it on your couch and pause it. Like, no, that's not a movie.
Yeah.
That's and it's even pushed me out too. Not to continue to derail the conversation, but I was a 30 to 40 movies in the theater a year to maybe 8 now, because most movies look like shit, or
Yeah.
they're ruined with the trailer. And I'm just like, okay, well, I don't have time to go see it and pay. I don't want to sit in your moving seat for $22 and eat $42 popcorn. I want to spend $15, be air conditioned. I don't want you talking anywhere near me. Shut up and watch the movie.
Yeah.
But it's tough these days. And I don't even care. It's like, I'm not one of those people that didn't want to go back into the theaters after the pandemic. During the pandemic, I was the only person going to the movie theater when it reopened. And I was like, this is great.
Yeah. Actually, that I did see Tenet. Literally, me and my friend were the only people in the theater, and it was the greatest thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I went to see Dune when it came out, and there was maybe like 12 people in the theater. I'm like, this is amazing. And
Yeah.
that movie was made to be seen in a theater. That movie was not made for your first viewing in your house.
Yeah.
The sound was vibrating my future, not children, but what could be my future children. Like, literally, I was just. But anyway, movies. Yes, let's reel it back in a little bit, and I want to talk to you just about. We'll talk about commercials and stuff, but let's talk about these LMFAO videos, because when you add up the views on Party Rock Anthem and Sexy and I Know It, you've got almost half the human population. You've got like 3 billion views, which is insane to think that even if they are, let's just say, only 70% of them are real people that watched that once, that's still close to half of the humans that lived at that time have seen those videos. Which came first? Because I'm not familiar with. That's not my type of music, so I can't remember when they came out or which came out first.
They were not quite back to back, but Party Rock came first, and then Sexy I Know It was same year we did them, but later in the year. But yeah, those were really special, special videos and special times, and I mean, really, really good times. I mean, I have so many fond memories from the experience and working with those guys, and just the feelings that I had in my life, and just the experiences I got to have from it. But yeah, when I had worked with them prior to that, we did other songs with them. Like they had one called, Shot, Shot, Shots and stuff. And so we've done
Oh,
like,
that's them too?
yeah, that's them too. Yeah. So that's what's funny about that song is, even when we made it, and I was talking to the record label people, we all kind of knew, we're like, oh, this is going to be one of those songs that like ironically is around forever. Like, there will always be a time where you can play Shots in a bar or a club or something. So anyways, I had a good relationship with them, and we had done some videos before, and, Party Rock was coming out. And speaking of Thriller, that was our inspiration. They had the song coming out, and I got on the phone with Red Foo's the name of the one of the guys from it. And we talked for like hours, just spitballing back and forth. Like he knew that he wanted to have like this dancing in it. And we just were talking about, old school videos, and we were talking about Thriller. And we said like, oh, maybe we do this, and it's a virus, and it spreads, and it's like a zombie dance.
Little 28 days later.
Yeah. 28 days later thing. And so I wrote the treatment is what it's called for it, just putting the images together and the flow and everything. And, they approved, and we did the video, and we shot it on I think it was the Warner Brothers back lot is where we made it. And it was a lot of fun. It was a great time. And what's funny about it is, so I'm like every artist where everything I do is shit, like I think everything I do is shit. It's like the same with my YouTube. All my YouTube videos, these are terrible. Worst video I ever made. That's how I feel. But when I made that video, and I think I finished the first cut with my editor, and we watched it from start to finish all the way through. And I was like, okay, I don't hate this.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's okay, and then I thought about it more, and I showed it to one other person in our the post facility, and who was like the EP of the post facility, and she watched it, and she was like, that was really good, something like that. And then I started thinking about it more and more, and I watched it more and more, and I was like, oh wait, like I think that this is going to be pretty successful. And that was the only time I really ever felt that. And sure enough, we put it out, and it was super successful beyond anything I could have imagined that it would do or be. It has followed me around everywhere. I mean, even the work I still do today is still like, hey, we'd like Mickey to do the Gap commercial. We love what you did with the Party Rock, so it's still like that type of thing that comes up in my life all the time. And if I'm ever in a wedding party, at a wedding, like obviously I have to walk out to Party Rock Anthem.
Sure.
So there's all those elements, and but it's you can't repeat or redo some kind of lightning in a bottle thing like that. So one of my funny, as you were explaining it to me and saying like, half of it, like half the Earth's population, I was thinking back on it, like some of the conversations I've had, as pitching on other projects and stuff, like they would say stuff to me like, we really like this thing to go viral, like how your Party Rock Anthem thing, and be like, cool, yeah, let me make that happen for you. It's like I can't, there's no way to do this ever again. But at that time it was fun, it was special. So yeah.
Crazy thing is, like, when I was watching, I once again, it's not my music, but I realized that I've known that song ever since it's existed, because it's used in so many, things. And it's like, it's funny how infectious that song is. And I wonder, like, if that's kind of like the idea, like the video reflects the fact how, like, I don't hate that song, but I hate what that song has done since I put it back in my head 2 days ago when I watched the video. And that is an infection. Like, that is the obvious, what the formula you hope of a pop song is, and obviously a video too, is that you want it to just get into people's heads and not leave. So is that kind of like the idea of like also the behind
Yeah,
the video too?
that was a little bit about it, trying to get that. I mean, I don't want it to sound like, you know, we thought or Red Foo thought that that's how catchy his song was. It really
Right.
wasn't. It was just sort of like, oh, the song came out and everyone was dancing and it
Yeah.
caught on, and it's a zombie virus thing. So that was really it. But yeah, it's kind of meta in terms of
Yeah.
what it ended up becoming.
Um, so going into Sexy and I Know It, I noticed, that video is shot in Venice Beach, and you can't mistake that for anywhere else in this world. How much of a pain in the ass was that shoot?
Oh,
Or was it?
no, it was definitely a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Because you can see it. You watch the video. There's just people watching, right? Like
Mhm.
we have security and we have
Yeah.
production stuff, but you can't fully shut down the beach. It's not. We're not the Avengers here.
No.
We don't have that scale of the production. But even though we had money, but I think at that time too, what was unique about it is you had Party Rock come out, and so now that song had been like the biggest song of the summer,
Mhm.
and then it was like we're doing this one, and it's open in the public. A lot of times like you work with a lot of artists like Katy Perry or Nicki Minaj or whatever. A lot of their pop stuff is more like studio sets, like
Sure.
glam stuff. So it's like you're not going to put like Nicki Minaj or Cardi B like in the middle of a Venice Beach crowd. So it was kind of a different what do you call it, security protocol in that sense. And so it was really difficult to make that video for that reason. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's one of those, like, at the time it sucked, but looking back on it, it was a wild experience. So it's kind of fun in hindsight.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, you could tell it was a fun video. Yeah, I think the only other video I can think of that was shot there was the Chili Peppers did it, but they did it from a house looking
Yeah,
down on the beach, so a little bit easier because the crowd is gonna be there no matter what.
yeah,
But, I always I once again, growing up in New York, you see New York City's used in, half the movies and TV and all that exists, and they somehow managed to do it, but I watched them shoot pieces of The Dark Knight from across my building, Dark Knight Rises, I should say, um, on another building, so, like, there is relative anonymity in some spots, but you don't get that at Venice Beach,
yeah. It's
you
true.
know?
It's there's some places, like you said, just it has a look, and
Yeah.
you know it when you see it.
One of your other videos that was, very dance centric. You have a lot of, and that's one of the things I noticed in your commercials, your short films, and your videos. Like, you are very movement obsessed. Whether it's the subjects moving, the cameras moving, both. Like, there's a lot of movement in your all of your film across the board. Whether, like I said, it's those three different places. Is that something that that was something you always enjoyed seeing, or it's just kind of like as you fell into your own kind of vision, that's your vision, is a lot of movement? Do you have a background in dance?
I don't have a background in. I'm a great wedding dancer. You get a couple cocktails in me, I'm pretty good on that floor, but I can't say that I have a background in dance. But um, I don't know. I think I grew up playing. I was a drummer. I played drums,
Mhm.
so rhythm was just very, very important to me, and timing and stuff. And I'm a huge fan of Edgar Wright.
Oh,
His
yeah.
films. And if you watch like Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead and stuff, like how tight, or Baby Driver is the even
Oh,
more obvious example, how tight
yeah.
and specific and particular everything is. And I think, like, I've always had the philosophy of like, we're shooting these artists. We the job is to make them cool, right? The job is
Yeah.
to make them look cool. And when you have like the camera and the sharpness and the blocking and the movement, it's tight and it's all working together, then I mean, how can they not be cool? He's everything is in rhythm, and he's walking to the beat and people are looking at the same time. And so that was always just a goal, like with especially their videos. And yeah, it kind of worked into my other work of just I just always really like that. You just everything that's tight and flies by together, and everything's
Mhm.
working, synergistically. And so um yeah, I think the Edgar Wright inspirations are there for sure. And I just enjoy watching that type of work.
Great inspiration to have. Baby Driver, especially as we talk about music videos through this whole thing, like, that whole movie is just one music video.
Yeah.
It's perfect and orchestrated. And anybody who hasn't seen that movie really should, because it's not the Cornetto trilogy, but I think it's his best standalone film.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I imagine like, I mean, I think people understand it, but man, when I think about like what it takes to execute that, like
Mhm.
it is so difficult. It's one thing to, just sort of do things verite and docu-style and kind of let the scene happen. It's one thing to be the architect of like, it goes like this and this and this. Like you're thinking about 17 things. And I don't know what working with Edgar Wright is like, and I don't think I've had people talk about it, but or I've listened to interviews with people talking about it, but I have to imagine like it's probably not like a pleasant experience working with him because
Yeah,
I bet he is so focused and in his head on stuff that it's probably
very
yeah
meticulous.
very meticulous, very difficult, but not necessarily a bad way. I don't know. That's just something I thought about, and maybe it's me projecting because I think about some of the times that I've done stuff. I'm like, oh, I wasn't as chummy on sets as I always
Right.
should have been because I was just so like, wait, okay, then the shot goes to this shot and then whatever.
Maybe it's offset on his films because it's all humor, like
Mm,
all of his movies are humorous. And so he does seem to, work well with certain people like Nick Frost and Simon Pegg. So there's
yeah.
something to it. Speaking of dance, I wanted to just ask you, you did a CeeLo Green video with Jaleel White, Mr. Steve Urkel, another like great coordinated dance, on a backlot. I believe that was a backlot, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like almost Sesame Street.
Yeah. Yeah. That was kind of the goal. I mean, the song is, it's called Cry Baby and it's about breaking up. And so I think,
Mhm.
the idea, it came to me and it was like, oh, here's the CeeLo Green video. Here's a song called Cry Baby. The only thing was, oh, CeeLo can't make the video shoot, but we got to make something. And so that was the brief. Like, and oftentimes the briefs are, yeah, just here's a song. I don't know, write something cool.
Yeah.
So I just listened to it the first time and it was just like, I mean, it's the happiest breakup song in the world. Like that's the sound. So I was like, okay, well, like, what if we did this kind of musical Sesame Street, just it's the happiest breakup song in the world. And that was kind of, the impetus for it. And we just knew that CeeLo couldn't be in it. So we were like, oh, well, let's just get like a celebrity to cameo and just
Mhm.
do it for him. And so we threw out a bunch of different names and Jaleel White was one. I think it was either, I don't know if I can take credit. Maybe it was like even my girlfriend at the time who was like, "Oh, you should do Jaleel White or something like that." And so his name got thrown in the mix, and we reached out to his manager and asked if he would be interested in doing it. And it was funny because I think it was at a time where like talking about nostalgia. And this is
Yeah.
something that Jaleel said to me, where he had been off of Family Matters and stuff, and hadn't really worked in a significant way in a long time.
Mhm.
And he said, we're getting to that age where now someone like you who grew up watching me in Family Matters and enjoyed it is like, yeah, I would love to work with Julia
Yeah.
White. And so it's kind of, you have a nostalgia in this like appreciation of wanting to work with someone like him. And that's exactly how I felt about it. So
Sure.
he agreed to it, and he's just like, as long as I don't have to wear glasses, that was his only requisite.
Makes
Um,
sense.
and then and yeah, he was awesome. He was great, like super super talented, and learned the choreo and song really easily. And then I think it was really good for him. I think he was on like Dancing with the Stars after that, and I've stayed a little bit in touch with him, and he was like, no,
Mhm.
that was a big thing for me to do. Like it was a really great thing, and got a lot of phone calls after that.
Well, that's good. I mean, yeah, he was pigeonholed into, the Urkel role for a long time, and it took a while, but then it's kinda like the Haley Joel Osment thing, like, you break out of your shell a little bit,
Yeah,
and everybody realizes there's more to this person than just this one role.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you did a video for Soulja Boy called
Mhm.
Pretty Boy Swag. Is
Mhm.
that where the moniker Swagglehaus comes from?
It is. Yes, it is.
Okay.
So yeah, story about that, and I think I've shared this on my YouTube channel a couple times, but in case people don't know, I did a video with him, and we were working all day on set together, and he was like, I'm me. If you guys watch my YouTube channel, this is my personality, right? It's a
Mhm.
little kind of nerdy, quirky, funny. And so he was like, Mickey, he's like, you got swag, man, but you got like nerd swag. You got like swaggle. That was what he said to me. And then Haas was just like, Haas is like a cool way to say house.
Yeah.
You see in other establishments or like ice cream Haas or whatever, right? Like they're just
Yeah.
these places. So I was like, oh, Swaggle Haas, House of Nerd Swag. And so that was the invention of that name. And it became like my gamer name. It was like my Xbox game tag was like Swagglehaus and things like that. And so, when I started my YouTube channel, I just happened to have, the YouTube name Swagglehaus and things like that. And I was like, I don't know, I'll just use this, so there wasn't too much thought into it. And as far as, this is the brand, but it just became my gamer tag that became my YouTube name from there.
And that's quite a popular song from what I understand. I was never on a Soulja Boy boat.
Yeah. It's a funny song. I mean, it was huge for him. And Soulja Boy is obviously, has a legendary, what do you call him? A lot of people are like, he kind of invented the ringtone rapper thing, like the one hit wonder thing. Although he's, had multiple one hit wonders or one hits, but he in a lot of ways, he set the foundation for kind of like viral artist songs.
Because he was really young when he first got big. He was like, wasn't he like 16 or something like that?
Yeah, it was like that the Soulja Boy Tell 'Em song, which I didn't do that video, but that would like put him on the map for sure. And I think he was in high school when he made it, so it just became so huge. And everybody, all these mumble rappers today and TikTok stars, like they're all kind of like going in the Soulja Boy wake.
Weird. I don't know. I guess like something had to take the place of radio and MTV, and it took a couple years, but it's just it's TikTok, it's Instagram, it's YouTube. Like that's where people find artists. I mean, speaking, you spoke about Katy Perry. One of the things I blew somebody's mind the other day talking about how that before she was Katy Perry, she was religious singer on the Warped Tour, Katy Perry. And people have no clue that that's how she got her start. And like same with Eminem, he was on the Warped Tour and got the shit booed out of him for like all the dates that he was on. And now who would boo Eminem except for the weird conservative people?
Yeah, that's so funny. I actually didn't know that. I mean, I know Katy Perry. I think she said part of her story is that she lived out of her car for a little bit, so she's got that like major come up. But I didn't know that she started.
Yeah, she was like a Christian acoustic singer on the Warped Tour. I don't know what year it was, but it's clear, obviously before she was big. But I remember hearing about it. I used to be so involved with music news and just, kind of knowing what was going on. And now I don't, because every time I hear about a musician, I'm just like, oh God, I don't want to know that about that person.
I know. The saying, just speaking Dark Knight, you either die a hero or live long enough to be a villain. Like it just becomes more true every day.
It really does. It really does. So you've done a lot of commercials. I think, most notably, maybe I'm wrong, the Scream Queens commercials that you did, but you won an Emmy for Nickelodeon. Let's talk about that. Cause I know you display it, but I was just like, why does he have an Emmy? Why do you have an Emmy?
I ask myself that same question every day. I did a bunch of, television work for like Nickelodeon and there was a campaign that we did. And it was a bunch of commercial works with like little kids, Nickelodeon stuff. And it was funny because I didn't even know that there was an Emmy category, but I just got it after I made the commercial and the spots and like there was some other component stuff to it, like some title credit stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They were just like, hey, Mickey, guess what? Like you won an Emmy. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? They're like, no, there's an Emmy category. It's like an off air.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's actually, here's the thing. There's tons of Emmy categories. Like obviously you have like, the primetime stuff, but there's so many Emmys you can win random stuff for. So I won this Emmy for, I don't know what specifically it is, but it's for my directing on this, creative Nickelodeon campaign thing. So
that's still cool. It's a great accomplishment.
Yeah, no, I'm so happy to have it. It's cool, to sort of check off like a accomplishment list. And it was funny because when I started my YouTube channel in COVID, like I was just filming in my office and that's just where I put the award. It's just on that one bookshelf or whatever. And so I just started filming it, and I didn't really think too much of it as far as like,
Right.
oh, it's like my flex, but I was just filming in my room. And then it became this thing that people just kept being like, why is that thing there? So,
Well, you can say this, you have an Emmy and you have something in common with Todd McFarlane. He also has an Emmy. So
I'm one step closer
yeah,
to being on Todd's level.
but
I'm still at the bottom of Mount Everest in this analogy.
Sure, but you're there.
But we're at base camp. We're ready to. I put my shoes on. Ready to climb.
And do you have a VMA?
I've been VMA nominated. I don't think we won a VMA, unfortunately.
Well, I think you share that with Todd also.
Oh, well, there you go. VMA nominated comic creators, Todd McFarlane.
That's right.
And Mickey Finnegan.
All of these things, it's almost like I'm talking to Todd McFarlane again. It is.
It's me and Todd. We just we're like peas in a pod.
What was it like working with Mike Tyson on that commercial? You did a commercial with Mike Tyson for
Beats
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Beats
Yeah.
headphones.
Beats.
What's funny? What is Beats doing these days? They're huge. It came out like just a huge company. Maybe Apple. I think Apple bought them.
Apple bought them, making Dr. Dre a billionaire, which is an amazing thing to say as somebody that used to listen to NWA as a kid.
Right.
And it's like, he's a billionaire. Like, kudos to Dr. Dre for taking his career in that direction.
We need to make some headphones.
Yeah, we do.
We need to get the headphone business.
Also, probably put a shit ton of money in Trent Reznor's pocket when they hired him to try and work on the algorithm, and then he quit because he's like, I'm fucking over this.
Yeah,
but I think they gave him Apple shares anyway.
That would be nice. But Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was, he's like a larger than life character. Like he's super nice guy, like really pleasant to work with and a lot of fun. But yeah, when you sometimes you work with people and they come into the room and it's like, oh yeah, that's Lil Jon. Yeah. Oh yeah, cool. Like, hey, that's Soulja Boy, Oh, that's John Stamos. Oh wow. Whoever it is. And then sometimes it's like Mike Tyson walks into the room and you're like, that's Iron Mike Tyson. You know what I mean? Like that's Mike Tyson, man. Yeah. So yeah, it was like, it was surreal to work with him, but he was super, super nice. And I think my one memory is, we had a tiger in the commercial, and the tiger trainer was like, hey, it's really, really important. Like, Mike, be very, very, just don't pet the tiger when it's not, being filmed, and, let's just be very, very careful, blah, blah. And Mike Tyson, who, if people know, was like, he owned like many tigers. So as soon as he walked onto like the filming area, we're filming in this living room in this house, and the tiger was there, he was like, oh, kitty. And he just like grabbed it and started like mushing his face in the face of the tiger, like just completely fearless. The tiger trainer was just like, oh God, but then I think he sort of just, it's like Mike Tyson. I'm not going to tell Mike Tyson to stop. So he just sort of let it happen. But, the kitty was happy to get cuddled by the champ, so that was it. But it was just really, really funny that he just, no hesitation.
Yeah. That's on brand for him. Like you said, he's fearless. This guy has had grown men punching him in the face for, 30 years straight. Trying to punch him in the face for 30 years straight. But it's interesting because I've done a little bit of TV work, production work and stuff. And, a lot of my friends know my claim to fame is being in an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. And just, I got to watch Larry David and Larry Charles work together. And it was like the coolest experience of my life.
Wait, that's amazing. You have to tell me the story. Like how did this come about?
So, back before I moved to the West Coast, I worked for a sports memorabilia company that did live and silent auctions. And I've been in the sports memorabilia industry for, I don't know, like 15 years. And his production company, Curb's production company, called us to rent a bunch of sports memorabilia for a set. And it was the season where Larry goes back to New York. So what was that, season 7? or 8 or whatever.
Hmm.
It's the Mr. Softy episode where he goes to get Jeff a ball signed by Mookie Wilson at the card show, and we furnished that entire set. And so I spent 8 hours or 12 hours that day just pretending to be a vendor at the thing, and uh, it was amazing because, like, every time they walked into frame, JB Smoove would go this way off camera and go right up to me and go, "Joe Pepitone, what's up?" and like slap me 5. Get it like 10 times. But it was amazing to watch him work because famously, obviously, everybody kind of knows that show is like they work without a script, they work with a base plot line. They changed the entire plot of that show, of that episode from where I was watching them film it, where he was like going out with Amy Schumer's character that was on the softball team. But yeah, I got to be a part of it, got to sit in Larry's chair when they all broke for lunch because we just stayed on set the whole time. But it was like, and it turns out to be one of the funniest episodes of the entire show. It's a classic. And yeah, I got to watch this guy who I always tell people I'm Jason Alexander going on Larry David. Like I'm in my 40s and I will be Larry David in 15, 20 years.
Yeah, so that's amazing. Like how I'm basically Todd McFarlane, you're basically like Larry David. Like
Yeah.
that's where we're at, you know.
Yeah, that is where we're at. But yeah,
That,
it's the crowning achievement of my production career.
well, that's cool. I mean, do you have like a decent shot like in the actual edit? Like are you
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes. There's 2 stills that I actually ripped on a high def. When he's waiting online, you just see me in the background. I have more hair and no gray in my beard, but it is clearly me and nobody else.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. But it was interesting because I've had friends that went into production and they would tell me about shoots, and I've been on set of a couple of different things, and it's a long day, but for one day to get to watch somebody like that work, the day wasn't long enough.
Right.
So I can imagine what it's like to be around like shooting stuff with people that you're actually, you know, either a fan of or friends with or both. I get that's why certain directors, like a Kevin Smith, that dude's just shot movies with his friends for the first 15 years of his career because
Yeah.
that's going to make you a better, it's going to make a better on-set life.
It's honestly, I mean, I think this is just true of every industry or whatever you do in life. I mean, like the more you get to like work with people who you get along with, that you enjoy, that are your friends, like it really goes a long way, into the experience and to the end result of the product. Like it makes a lot of sense to me when you have like those type of creative teams that always stick together. You develop the shorthand, you have the synergy, you guys get along, and there's a mutual respect, which is, that's the other thing that's always so difficult. Every time you go into a new anything, like any project, even outside of film or whatever, like, and you're working with new people, it's like establishing the rapport and the respect and trust is always like, that's almost like half the battle in a way. And when you already have that, like you can just hit the ground running. And so I totally get why people do this or do that.
Yeah. And it was fun to watch Larry David and Larry Charles work because clearly, those guys have been working together for a long time. And same with JB Smoove at that point, it was like his 4th season, or maybe even more. And it was just kind of effortless. They called me out once though, because they said I was supposed to be mouthing. I'm like, I've never done this before.
Like you ruined it. The best take.
So I gotta say, I didn't know Mom Fight. I didn't know that you did that. And I watched it the other night. For those of you that are listening that don't know what I'm talking about, you go to mickeyfinnegan.com or you go on YouTube and you type in Mom Fight. There's a short film about 12 minutes long, directed and written by you called Mom Fight. To me, and I'm seeing the influence of Jingle All the Way on this movie, but also the fact that you're a huge nerd like me because of the setting. How long ago did you write it? Let's hear a little bit about it because it was awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was. This was 2019, I think, is when I did that movie. Short film. It was just like kind of a fun passion project to do. Had sort of the itch to kind of get into some fight choreo and incorporate, our love of nerddom and do just a fun kitschy, short. And we put the team together. I wrote it. I think it was like one morning, just on a kind of a whim. And yeah, like Jingle All the Way it was a big influence, and as far as like here's an archetype for like a good little plot to kind of create a reason to have, you know, fun fight scene and tell jokes within, you know, the humor or the nerd space. And so we put that film together, and I had a few friends who are amazing choreo fight people. Like the girl who stars in it, her name is Michaela, the blonde girl, opposite of Jen, the Asian girl. Michaela is actually the stunt double for oh my God, Black Widow, not
Scarlett Johansson,
other Black Widow, Florence Pugh.
Pugh.
Florence Pugh's stunt double. You know, she does that, and so she works on all the Marvel stuff, and the guy who choreographed for us is a good friend. His name is Christopher Troy, and I think he choreographed for Echo, and I think he's done other choreograph stuff for some of the other Marvel projects at this point. So yeah, I had like a little all-star team of people, you know, I was writing all their coattails. But yeah, it was just a way to kind of do our own little superhero thing and nerd thing and create a fun project. And yeah, thank you for watching it and saying that you enjoyed it.
You know, it's one of those things, like, every once in a while I'll stumble across somebody that does short films that I'm, you know, either interested in or just kind of like doing my own research on. And I forget that it's kind of a lost art in the mainstream, where, like, I think we knew what music videos, a lot of them were short films. And this thing just not only made me laugh, but the choreography, that's the word. The choreography was so good. Like, you're feeling those punches, those kicks, and it's hilarious. Plus, you got a lot of nerd stuff. Just, you know, it's shot in what's the name of the store that it was shot in?
So yeah, it's a store called Blast from the Past. So if you ever find yourself in Southern California in Burbank, you guys can check it out.
I feel like I've been in there before. I love there's the use of the Hulk hands. There's shots with comics. There's a lot of action figure shots, and you know, it's just like it shows, you know, like you're wearing your nerddom on your sleeve in that entire shoot, and it was just really enjoyable. Do you think it could ever be a seed for something larger? You know, maybe a feature length film that has more of a plot, obviously, but involves that kind of set piece.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, you know, action comedies are something I really enjoy. I mentioned earlier how much I love Edgar Wright, you know, so a lot of the Hot Fuzz is one of my all-time favorite movies. So Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead and films like that. And yeah, I think I made that film, and yeah, I'll be honest, like, we took the idea to a couple like places that are interested in sort of, you know, Christmassy type of projects and things like that. But an action comedy is a tough one to sell if you're not Edgar Wright. So yeah, I have aspirations for that. I have screenplays that are not necessarily like Mom Fight, the screenplay adaptation, but I have movies that are like, hey, if you read this, here's my visual proof that I could execute a kind of like a kitschy action comedy. That's kind of like what it's there for.
Right. And that one that's shot well with good angles, and, you know, actions. I don't know, because I'm not a director, but I imagine action's probably the hardest thing to shoot, because you have to really concentrate on, you don't want to make your audience nauseated. You got to make sure that it works, right? That it's not like a bad WWF match or WWE match. And yeah, it's all based on movement. It has, you know, nothing to do with a still shot. I mean, unless you're, you know, like, what is it? Gareth Evans, the guy that directed The Raid and Raid 2.
Oh yeah.
I don't think there's anybody better that shot an action movie in the last 15 years than him. But he does some still camera fights, and it's like, that has to be choreographed to the T on that. Otherwise, you're going to see the cracks in it.
It's really, it's definitely a dance. I mean, this is like, you know, very in the weeds, but yeah, there's like choreography is one part, and then like filming what the choreographers are creating is the other. And so it's you really got to have like a synergy and an understanding of, you know, what people are trying to do and what angles work best with, you know, the way that the choreography is constructed. So yeah, a lot went into that. A lot of filming, the rehearsals and stuff. And on my phone, just being like this guy. And then I'd show it to the choreographer and be like, oh, I was thinking like of doing it like this. What do you think? And so we'd have a lot of those conversations. And so, yeah, I think, when I watch, say, Marvel movies and stuff, and the choreo isn't good, like Deadpool and Wolverine, I thought it did actually really great choreo, but sometimes you watch the ones and I'm like, you can tell like they didn't put the work into this, and so it requires definitely a lot of discipline and effort and coordination, but I think people always enjoy it when it's well done.
Speaking of WWE, let's talk about this script that you wrote a bunch of years ago, a decade ago, about Vince McMahon that got optioned by the WWE. It's an interesting story from what I've heard.
Yeah, so it is kind of a weird thing. Like I've written a few different screenplays that I've got optioned. I have other screenplays that I'm trying to get made. But one of the ones I did, like you said, I think, when did I write this? 2014 or 15, I think, is when I first did it. Was, there's a famous event in wrestling called the Montreal Screwjob. So regarding Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Yeah, anyone that is, a wrestling fan, I don't need to tell you the whole story of it, but if you're interested, you guys can search, any YouTube documentary.
Great documentary about it. Yeah.
So at that time, we were just so like fixated on this story and thought it was so interesting that I think, kind of out of like maybe a naiveness, me and my writing partner were just sort of like, dude, let's write the script. Like this should be a movie. It's so incredible. Like, what an incredible story, like art imitating life, and Oscar Wilde and the deceit and betrayal and brotherhood and like all this stuff. So we just, I spoke to my lit agent at the time, and I was like, dude, I want to write this. I think we can write an amazing script for this. And he was like, oh, I mean, Mickey, like, okay, like you can write it, but it's not like you're not like best friends with Bret Hart, or you're not like, you don't know Vince McMahon personally. So like the only way to get this out there is like, yeah, sure, you can just write it, and hey, I'll send it to WWE, entertainment. And I guess if they like it. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then, so I don't know, 6 months later, we write it, and I sent it to my agent, and he reads it, and he's like, hey, this is actually really, really good. And so he sent it to WWE has like their own movie studio department and everything. So he sent it to them, and it got ran up the flagpole, and people over in that building, they kept saying like, yeah, we like this. Yeah, we like it. Yeah, we like it. And then I know that Vince McMahon was pitched it. I doubt that he actually read it, but I know that he was like, hey, there's this script. Here's the details, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, cool. So they optioned it, and they decided to go with it, and they just have it in their tool belt. So it was an interesting thing that I made, and it's sort of out in the ether. But with a lot of movies in Hollywood, there's like, people say it's like development hell, or things can go into purgatory, and it's really hard to get a movie made. And it was for sure a big learning experience for me, because you can write a script and get it out there, but unless you have a little bit of, and hit a grand slam, and they just read it and they're like, yeah, this is great, we'll option it.
Yeah.
But unless you have like some other element of momentum, or like, let's say, there was an actor who happened to read it that was like, whatever, I'm Bradley Cooper, I'll play Bret Hart. Cool. Like now all of a sudden there's momentum. Or like some producer, I made this movie, I'm Christopher Nolan, reads it, and he's like, yeah, I want to make this, It's like, unless you have those elements, like you can't gain that sort of momentum and traction, no matter how good the script can be. It'd be the greatest thing you've ever read, but you still need people to jump on board. So, it was a script we made, and we put it out, and nobody knows who Mickey is, especially with regards to wrestling. So it just kind of went to WWE, and they have it. And if they ever decide to do anything with it, I mean, they can do it.
Well, folks, you heard it here first. Montreal Screwjob, directed by Chris Nolan, starring Bradley Cooper, in theaters 2027.
I mean, if they're listening, go find it. Breaking Kayfabe.
Was it favorable to? Was it more of an honest take on the situation? Was it more favorable to, one side or the other? I mean, that's obviously a classic story, and for years I sided with Bret, and I think I still side with Bret.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I think it probably is. It was important for us to do as much research as we could when we wrote it.
Hmm.
So we basically watched every single documentary that's ever been made about it and read
Yeah.
every single book that has ever been made about it. And so we'd like to think that we have kind of a good perspective on like what sort of happened and who's sort of in the right and wrong. And we really don't try to paint anyone as being particularly wrong. It was just sort of
Hmm.
everyone did what was in their own best interest. And
Right.
that's kind of, and so whoever you sort of think has the most sort of sympathetic aspect to that is probably the one that is the most sympathetic character. But that's sort of like how we decide to kind of approach it. And I think for the most part, yeah, maybe Brett comes off as more sympathetic when you read it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think there is space out there one day for the greatest, a great wrestling movie? Because documentaries, like Dark Side of the Ring, stuff like that is great because the real story is always more heartbreaking than what we're showing on the screen. And Iron Claw was good, but it's flawed. It compacted
Yeah.
a story, which would have been the most depressing story if they didn't compact it. It just was a depressing story on film. It would have been really, really depressing if they told it exactly how it happened.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, even when they did option it, like they said through my agent, like, hey, this is a long down the road project. Like they kind
Yeah.
of made it known. And I even got the sense that they're like, this might even be something where, I mean, it's really like would only ever be made like until like after Vince McMahon passes away, or
Mhm.
something kind of like that. Um, but to that point, it's really more. I mean, some of our references are more like Moneyball, Social Network kind of
Yeah.
aspect to it. So it wasn't like a puff piece,
Yeah.
to Vince McMahon. So there was a little bit like, yeah, I don't necessarily know what they would have discussed inside the building and how they felt about it, but yeah, like back to your question, like, can it actually be sort of made in that way that I think like a compelling version of it would be made? Maybe, but
Yeah.
kind of like you said, like with Iron Claw, like they had to pull the punches a little bit. And I think I'm sure one day like Vince will have his own biopic made or
Oh, I'm sure.
whatever it is, but it's not going to be that gritty social network style,
Yeah.
you know,
No.
which I think our script kind of was, and probably it's one of the reasons why it's a tougher sell for sure, or tougher
Yeah.
for them to greenlight it.
It's I think that wrestling's probably one of the most unexplored, um, pieces of Americana that has not been really touched on film. We've got some of the greatest, great baseball movies. You just named Moneyball. There's even, there's good other sports movies, but I think baseball's the one that really kind of translates. And then biopics, obviously, there's tons of them, but Social Network is, I'd love to see Fincher and Sorkin take on a guy like Vince McMahon and see what they'd come up with because it would
Oh,
be insane.
oh, it would be incredible. Like, and I think you're right. Like, I think wrestling is kind of one of the most interesting entertainment art forms,
Hmm.
and I think you can learn so much about it. It's almost like in comics too. It's like it's this ever persisting story that has existed in theory from like Bruno San Martino, who was the original champion, to say Cody Rhodes today, who holds the
Yeah.
very same belt. It's this never ending TV show that has existed, and there's this continuity that's been going through the entire decades of story, and through it culture changes and people change, and even how the audience views it, and how it evolves. And so it's one of the most fascinating kind of, yeah, like American art forms and entertainment fields, much like comic books in that way.
Yeah, yeah, and cartoonist kayfabe and Ed and Jim kind of put that in people's minds that like comics and wrestling are the same. Like there is so much crossover with the way that both things exist, both to our eyes as the people that read them or write them or collect them, as it is to the characters in the story. And so I think both of those things could be explored from the other side. Where's the Jack Kirby movie? We'll get a Stan Lee movie, sure, but it's going to be kayfabe.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, and man, we need some of those
yeah,
movies, because it's this talk about like a great sort of Americana story, of like
Hmm.
our culture, within comic books. I think is something that should be sort of celebrated. It's something that's really cool that has been created, within the American art form, within the last, say, handful of decades.
I think there's a lot right there to explore there. If we're talking comic movies, we could talk about a Kirby movie, or a Simon and Schuster, any of those guys that created. But there's also, we grew up and Clerks is like this seminal movie to us as kids, as teens. Why don't we have anything that kind of dives into the culture of collecting comics from the aspect of like being a comic store rat or being a comic store owner? Even record stores have gotten their shine with a movie like High Fidelity. Um, I think it is not exclusively American, obviously, but the American comics culture is completely different from what they have in Japan or what they would have in Europe, France, or even in the UK. And it would be a great story to tell. Like, imagine The Sandlot, instead of being about baseball, it's about kids that collect comics.
Dave, if only there was a person who worked in film entertainment who could write stuff and also had a passion for comic books, and had a YouTube channel about comic collecting and vintage and stuff like that. He might be interested in trying to create something like that.
He might. And I wonder if he's into a collaborator of somebody that was also there, collecting as a kid who's got a sense of, I don't know, maybe we've just figured it out.
I don't know if that person could find someone who's played, some type of dealer collectible person on, big TV show before. If he could find that on-air talent, he might be inspired to, pick up the project.
Jumping into your YouTube channel. Now, I realized in this research I've done, because I didn't dive into your music videos and stuff like that until recently. And one of the, like all the film stuff you've done, but jumping into your YouTube channel, like I get it now. Like you had a leg up on everybody when it comes to production. And it's pretty impressive to see. Like I watched some of your earlier videos and I'm just like, this motherfucker, he just took his talents from behind the camera and then put himself in front of the camera. And the way like you narrate and talk, you're telling stories, even if it's about real-time market data, it's undeniably compelling. It's almost unfair. But where did you start? What was COVID the impetus for the channel?
It was. Thank you for saying that. Like I don't think that. I mean, it's nice for you to frame it that way, but yes, when COVID happened and I was not working and nobody in film was working, I had nothing to do. And I've always been drawn to YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube, and I'm always on the internet, and I love like, whatever, watching, breaking kayfabe documentaries and things like that. So
Yeah.
or wrestling documentaries. So I always thought of doing a YouTube channel, and I think at the time I had considered like, oh, maybe I'll do like a film channel, but I don't know. I was really into comics then, and I was already watching other comic YouTube channels, and a film channel seemed kind of like, it sounds kind of like work. Maybe I'll do a YouTube comic thing, and that'll be more fun. Like I see what people are doing, and it seems fun. Like people are having these conversations about comics, and I think I can do this and add to the conversation in a way. So yeah, I jumped into it, and it's funny that you say the production thing, because for me, I was like, if I do this, I want it to be so like easy on the production end, because like I'm already like there. Like I don't want to get a light. I don't want to get anything more than the webcam that I still use today. Like, it's in, for most of my videos, the light comes from my desk is just like the window or whatever. And so I can only film, between like 6 a.m. and, basically 3 p.m. And then the sun had been setting, and it was like, oh, I guess I can't film anymore. And so, that was it. And so I just wanted it to be as easy as possible. And you just you get into it and you do the YouTube thing, and then you're just sort of on the treadmill. I mean, it gains a little bit of steam and traction, and people resonate, or they like it and they're watching, and it was just something that was really, really fun. and especially during COVID, getting a chance to just connect with people and build some type of, even though it's kind of like this fake digital world we're all in, but like it's
Yeah.
you have these bonds and relationships and you become friends with people online, and it was a lot of fun. And yeah. And so it is weird to hear you say, oh, like, yeah, you can tell stories through the YouTube thing. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that is, something I think I know how to do. But like everyone else, I've had to get a lot better on camera. Like I'm more of a behind the scenes guy. Like I
Sure.
don't really like being, I still to this day don't really like being, in front of the lens.
It's interesting because you just, it's kind of the way that you talk. It's like you're going to be a narrative person whether you're in front of the camera or behind it, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the idea. Like you're either going to direct or you're going to be, and it's just kind of like you do tell a good story even if it's just relaying data. I mean, like it sometimes just like I have no interest in listening to it because it's not my
Totally.
interest, but it's hard to shut it off because I'm just like, he's telling us the story. He's telling us what's going on. Like, um, and it's pretty insane to see some of like how your audience has grown and how it continues to grow. And it's impressive. Like I look up to what you've done with your channel because I'm still trying to find myself. I also, I have more, my opinions come with a little bit of sandpaper. So I know that's like a turnoff for people, but that's also why certain people watch and listen to me is because like, I've never had a filter as a human being for better or for worse.
Yeah. But you can tell even when I watch you now, knowing like, oh, you have a bit of like film production background and stuff, because I can see it in your videos as well. Like whether and maybe you have to do this if you're going to go to like OAX and film stuff and put, I mean, essentially it's a documentary. That's what
Yeah.
these things are. But you have that in you as well. And even the skits that you've done, I can see the humor in there too.
Yeah.
And then, now I can put all the pieces together. I'm like, oh, of course you like Weird Al Yankovic and all this stuff, right? Like now I see it too, right? So yeah, it's fun. I think YouTube is a phenomenal space, and it's been a wonderful thing for me to
Mhm.
have decided to do, and it's taxing and tiring, but I think I wouldn't change it. Like I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's been such a phenomenal thing, and even more so, like just being able to kind of have an audience that was willing to kind of support me on like making my own comic book and stuff.
Right.
That's really been like the biggest sort of like value that I've gotten back from it. And hopefully I've been able to kind of entertain people or do something where they appreciate it and then they supported the comic book. And so like I've been able to feel like, oh cool, I've been able to kind of create something out of this, and that's been an awesome thing. I'm so happy that I've been able to have a YouTube channel and do this.
I did wanna mention, I mean, like, I didn't even get to talk about Magic the Gathering and Dungeons&
Oh
and
yeah.
Dragons and League of Legends and the comic book Sanity, which I still haven't read, but I'm waiting for my copy of 2 and 1 to come together, and then I'm gonna dive in, but is that something that, like, it's just another arm of your storytelling that you found like, "Oh, I'm gonna try this because this is what I'm passionate about anyway." Is it something that had been gestating for a long time or something that you were just like, yeah, I have a story to tell, and this is a great vehicle for that story.
I think if you were gonna like lay me on the couch, and I was really gonna think back to like, what did I get into? What was my career? What was the point of all this stuff? I think I've just found that I'm somebody who likes telling stories and I like
Mhm.
creating with people, and whatever the vehicle didn't necessarily matter to me. It's kind of why I've like, yeah, I did videos and I'd like to make films, and I did commercials and other sort of ventures that are all like connected, but they're also different.
Mhm.
But comics was the same for me. So I say all that to say this. I made the comic book because I felt like, yes, I had a story to tell here. It was a challenge that was interesting to me, that could be a bucket list thing. I love comic books as, a medium and storytelling. And it just felt like this was a good chance for me to kind of combine both of my worlds, and like YouTube, Swagglehaus and Mickey Finnegan, and do something that feels, synergistic with itself. So that was really the impetus to that. And I think I really enjoyed it. It's such a similar but different creative muscle that I've used in making it, and I'd like to continue to do it. I mean, it's very difficult. The pipeline is slower because artists obviously have a very taxing thing that they have to do. I'm fortunate. I'm just the writer on it, and so shout out to Santiago. He's actually doing the artwork, which takes so much time, and but it's so rewarding when it comes out. And so so I don't know if I kind of forgot what the question was, but it's been it's a passion, and I just like telling stories. It's really what it is.
And for anybody that's a storyteller, I mean, that's really all you could ask. You can only hope for people to take away that there was passion involved in this thing that you do. Like that I think is the greatest feeling when you're consuming somebody else's art, is that you feel like this person put something into it. Doesn't even have to be like they put their entire soul. It's just that there's a piece of that person in it, because there is so much out there in the world of film and music and TV and comics that is soulless. And you can feel that too. You can feel that too when it's soulless. And I think watching Mom fight was like kind of like the nice cherry on top of that, to see, like, watch videos. I watched some commercials, and then I watched this and I'm like, oh, this is sick. Like, this is him wearing the stuff that he loves on his sleeve with his creativity involved in it. So it's been nice getting to know you through that lens, literally like an actual physical lens. But I think this is a good place to wind it down. But I wanted to ask you, is there anything that you want to plug? I'm going to have all the links available for your YouTube and your website and stuff like that. But anything that might be coming down the pipeline that you want to plug?
Well, I mean, I will be fulfilling my Sanity issue 2, 3 very soon, and I'll definitely have some commercial stuff that I'll put out for that. That I still have to actually create those things, but hopefully people will enjoy them. I have some fun ideas. So those will be interesting. Or if people want to check that out, they can go to my YouTube and find the link, or go to swagglehauscomics.com and they can check out my comic series. And if they enjoy it and want to support, that'd be awesome. So other than that, my YouTube channel we'll keep it going. We'll keep doing content within the vintage comic space and covering different aspects to our hobby. And that's it.
Sweet. Well, thank you for taking your time out of your day to do this. This was something I was kind of like thinking about for a while, and I'm like, yeah, let me just ask. Can't hurt.
Yeah. And, I appreciate you inviting me on, and thank you for watching my work and being so detailed about it. I'm very, very humbled that you spent the time to do it. So thanks for inviting me on and doing this. And it was a lot of fun.
I really appreciate all the time that Mickey gave me with this interview today. We probably could have talked for about 3 hours, but an hour and a half will do for now. And I want to say thank you to all of you for listening to that and giving it your time as well. Before we get out of here, I got to ask you, for those of you that haven't rated the podcast, it really helps. All you got to do on Spotify is you scroll up to the top and there's a star rating, you hit it. On Apple, I don't know. I've never used Apple, but you can leave a star review and you can also write a review. On YouTube, you can just hit the like button. You can comment also if you'd like to. I think this is a really positive way to spend my time this week, was talking to Mickey. And I'll see you next week on Direct Edition, the sexiest podcast you could ever listen to.